Just give me 1 second. Okay. You ready? Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah wa ba'd. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds us of the Quran and tells us not to take the Quran for granted or not to abandon it. In Surah Al-Furqan, chapter 25, verse 30, he says, وَقَالَ الرَّسُولُ يَا رَبِّ إِنَّ قَوْمِ اتَّخَذُوا هَذَا الْقُرْآنَ مَهْجُورًا. He says, and the messenger has said, my Lord, my people have taken this Quran for granted. Right? They've taken it as if it's something that's abandoned. Right? So basically what Allah is saying, He's saying that there was a messenger in the past who was basically saying that the Quran has been taken for granted. It's been abandoned. Right? And the Quran is a recitation. The Quran is our guidebook. We're supposed to be living by the Quran and its teachings. And we should also be commemorating the Quran throughout the whole entire year, not just in specific parts of the year or specific months, right? And it's our guidebook. And what ends up happening is, when you abandon something, it means that you don't value it. It doesn't mean that it doesn't exist, right? So for example, there's some mosques in the world, giant mosques, right? People take a long time building them, constructing them, putting so much time and effort in all these things, but they didn't take care of them. They were abandoned. You know, nobody's praying in them. You see cobwebs over there, and you see dust over here, and they're not being used at all. The same exact thing can happen with the Quran, right? So if you've got a copy of the Quran, right, nice printings, or it's embellished in art or something like that, and you got it up on your bookshelf, and it's collecting dust. Nobody's reading it. Nobody's going through it. And it's just sitting there, right? This is exactly what Allah is mentioning in this verse. He's saying that sometimes people can take the Quran, they can have it, they can believe in it, but they end up abandoning it, right? As if it's something that's not valuable, as if it's something that's not even important. And this is something that really happens in the Muslim society today, in the Muslim Ummah. A lot of Muslims, you find so many people emphasizing memorization of Quran, only recitation of Quran, but no understanding, no reflection, no application, no practice, none of that stuff, right? And it's almost like the Quran has become some type of like charm or amulet or something like that, right? As if you do some, different rituals or something like that around it, and that's going to be sufficient. That's not the case, right? And that's it. Sort of become, unfortunately, feels like that's what Islam has become. But that's not what the religion has been intended to be, right? Someone can have the Quran in their house, right? They can say, I believe in this book. They can say, I follow this book. But it can still be abandoned because they're not giving it its due right? So the Quran is our guidebook for all people, for all Muslims. It shouldn't be something that's ever abandoned. Shouldn't be something that's ever taken for granted, right? And there's different ways of abandoning it, right? First way is not even opening it at all, not even for recitation or anything like that. The second category is just memorizing it or reciting it, but not giving its due attention to try to understand what it's actually trying to say. So there's people out there, they've been reading the Quran for 30 years, 40 years, and they've never read a translation of the Quran in their whole life, right? Never read a translation. If they don't know the Arabic language, of course. And that's a shame. That's really, really a shame. And then beyond that, once you get to know the meaning and the words, you go to the reflection. Because the reflection is actually what the Quran was designed to be, right? Not only just to, read the literal words, but also to apply in our life and to reflect as well. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to always, help us reconnect with the Quran and to not allow us to be among the people who take the Quran as something abandoned. Ameen. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.